Good afternoon. Appreciate you all joining with us this afternoon. I appreciate you accommodating my little bit of a lack of a voice. We are here this afternoon because in just a week, current Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice David Prosser will be ending his term on the court via his retirement as of the 31st of this month. And so we thought it was timely with me, obviously just coming back from Cleveland and having committed to be at a ribbon cutting today in Manitowoc for a great project there that's targeted towards affordable housing for veterans. I wanted to fulfill that commitment. I also wanted to accommodate, and I'm glad to have with us the Chief Justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court here, who leaves shortly to go to the conference of all the Chief Justices around the country. And so this works out well. This allows us to get this in by the 31st and accommodate each of our schedules and our time here today. Obviously, I'm pleased to be joined by Daniel Kelly, who has a distinguished record, and I'm pleased to announce today that I am announcing to all of you that I'll be appointing him to serve on the Wisconsin Supreme Court to take the place that will be open after the 31st of this month, the position of Justice Prosser. As I've said before, not just when it comes to Supreme Court appointments, but to the Court of Appeals and the circuit court positions I've made all across the state, how important it is for me. I have 3 specific litmus tests, and even though I'm not an attorney, we have a rather robust process. We accept applications and go through in great detail the writings and background and reviews about each of the individuals who apply to be on the High Court or any of the other judicial positions we fill. We then have a panel headed up by former Circuit Court Judge Michael Brennan, filled with distinguished attorneys and jurists from across the state who help us narrow the field. We then have a process within our office through our legal counsel, and in this case through our Chief of Staff, narrowing the field yet again. And we had 3 really outstanding finalists, 2 of whom I'd pointed to the Court of Appeals during my term up until this point. Any of the 3 would have been outstanding members of the Supreme Court. And today, after going through that process, after doing interviews with each of the 3 candidates, it's my honor to announce that I'll be appointing, or I am appointing, effective the departure of Justice Prosser, Daniel Kelly. Now, I mentioned I have 3 litmus tests for each of the judicial positions I make. Appointments I make. One is I want a person of integrity, and you'll hear a little bit about Dan's family here, but with the people that he's worked with, not only professionally but throughout the community, you'll see the integrity that he has. We certainly saw that in the recommendations and letters of support and comments that were given to us. It's something that we, not only through this process, but had heard and seen before. Secondly, I want people who understand the law. And certainly that's the case here, someone who's, again, very well respected for his knowledge of the law, both in practice, having practiced in multiple areas, being for a decade the head of the appellate process in one of the largest and well-respected law firms in the state, now having his own practice, his own firm that he co-founded, having a variety of experiences in that regard, certainly shows his expertise in the law. And third, what I fundamentally, most importantly look for are people who understand the proper role of the judiciary. And in today's society, in this state in particular, I believe the proper role of the judiciary is to uphold the Constitution of this state and the Constitution of this great country, and the laws duly enacted within it. No more, no less. That is the beauty of not only the state, but the country that we live in. The checks and balances of each of the branches, and this is something that Daniel Kelly has not only talked about, but has advocated for and has really practiced throughout his professional career and throughout his life, and really it's just an honor to have him here today. Now, as I think about, and of course this is the second appointment that I've made to the highest court in the land here in Wisconsin, I looked at the lay of the land in the Supreme Court as it stands today. And of the individuals that are currently on the bench here in the High Court, you have 3 individuals who at the time they joined the Wisconsin Supreme Court were circuit court judges. You have 2, including the Chief Justice, and my most recent prior appointment, who were members of the Court of Appeals, and you have two who did not have judicial experience, two who were highly qualified attorneys. One was the person that Attorney Kelly will be replacing, and that is David Prosser, who had served in the state legislature, who had served as a district attorney, and who at the time of joining the court when he was appointed by Tommy Thompson, then governor of the state of Wisconsin, was on the state tax appeals board. The other was a few years prior to that. In fact, it was literally 40 years ago this year when former Governor Patrick Lucey appointed Justice Shirley Abrahamson to the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. So you have a nice mix of different perspectives and different backgrounds, from folks who've been in the circuit court to the Court of Appeals to those who've been in private practice. In particular, the private practice, I think what was noticeable to me, and I think others throughout this process, was the extensive work that Attorney Kelly has both in the Court of Appeals process and before the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, as well as work at the federal level in parallel positions, and his undefeated track record appearing before the Wisconsin Supreme Court as well. All those things combined really, for me and for the others who are involved in this process, made this an excellent choice and a difficult choice, because we had a remarkable group of applicants, and in particular an outstanding group of finalists, any of whom I think would be well qualified to serve on the court. But when we looked at the totality of the record, of the experience, and of the opportunity to make a great appointment, it was an honor for me to appoint Daniel Kelly to the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Before I ask him to come up, though, I'd like to ask the Chief Justice to share a few words, as she has in the past. We made our prior appointment, and to talk about how this will fit in with the current court.
Thank you, Governor Walker. And thank you most of all for putting aside so many things that I know the governor has to deal with on an ongoing basis and making an appointment in a timely manner to the Wisconsin Supreme Court a priority. I know you've been all around the country, and it takes a lot of work to sift through all the people that applied. I watched with careful interest to all of those who submitted applications, and I was very pleased that we had a number of very qualified people. Now, I've known Dan Kelly for a very long period of time, and I am very, very pleased with the governor's appointment. He is going to be wonderful with his additions to scholarship for our opinions as we focus on the difficult issues brought to the court, but he also will be very helpful in other ways. You know, what you read about in the press are mostly our decisions that are contested case decisions that come to us, but that's only that's about half of the work of the court. You know, we deal with the budget for the entire judicial system throughout the state. And I'm going to be counting on Dan for a good deal of help as we work through the budget, because we begin now a biennial year when the court has to put together a budget for all of the agencies of the court throughout the state, and I know Dan will be very helpful. So I am very, very pleased with your choice, Governor, and thank you so much for making it a timely choice.
Well, thank you, Chief Justice. Appreciate that. We look forward to continuing to work well with you in that regard. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you my choice for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Daniel Kelly.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Governor Walker, and thank you, Chief Justice Roggensack. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and participate in this process. And thank you, Governor, specifically for the appointment. This is an exceptional honor, but it's more than an honor, it is also humbling. I've often heard people say upon the occasion of accepting an appointment that they are humbled by it. I've not understood until today how an appointment could both honor and humble at the same time. But as I contemplate the majesty of the law and the weighty responsibilities of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I understand I'm truly humbled. I have loved the law for pretty much as long as I can remember. Part of that comes from my understanding that the rule of law lies at the very foundation of civilization. and the courts have an indispensable role in preserving and protecting that rule of law. My career has been almost exclusively litigation. I've represented clients across the country in state and federal courts, and yet, to this day, I can't walk into a courtroom without my heart skipping a beat. I trust that will never change. I trust that I will always stand humbly before the law. I look forward to taking the oath of this office, in which I will promise to you and all of Wisconsin that I will faithfully apply the Constitution of this great state and of our country to the absolute best of my ability. Thank you so much.
With that, we'll take some questions if you got them. Sure.
Mr. Kelly, you likened affirmative action to slavery, and you said that allowing same-sex marriage will eventually rob the institution of marriage of any discernible meaning. What do you say to people who think that these frankly extreme views will cause you to disregard settled law with regard to affirmative action and same-sex marriage?
Sure. I'll comment in general, then I'll let him make any additional comments as well. But just to be clear, that same story, Bill, as you know, pointed out that he said obviously he doesn't consider those two things to be aligned, and so I think that's largely a non-story. In the larger context, the expectation I have, not only of this appointment, but any others out there, is that they're going to apply the law justly and uphold the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin. For any justice, or for that matter, any judge at the Court of Appeals or the circuit court level, they should ultimately set aside whatever personal beliefs they may or may not have on any issue and apply the law according to the Constitution of this state and to this country. And I think if you look at Attorney Kelly's background, you'll see that that's where he's had that process at both the appeals court level, the circuit court, or excuse me, the Supreme Court level, and in his work at the federal appellate process as well, and that's the expectation we have that he'll have on the bench.
I think the governor has it exactly right. The role of the court is separate and apart from our roles as individuals in the broader society. There needs to be a bright line distinction between the role of the court on the one hand and on the other, personal, political, and political philosophy beliefs. So in order to foster confidence that the court will not be importing personal beliefs into the work it does, I think it's inappropriate for a justice to comment publicly on their political beliefs or political philosophy. Now, I will be taking the same oath as every other member of the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. And for each of us, it will mean the same thing, which is as soon as we step into the courtroom, all of our personal, political, and philosophical beliefs take a back seat. The primary and only job of a Wisconsin Supreme Court justice is to apply the law as it is written. And the oath that I will take will guarantee to you that my personal and political beliefs and political philosophy will have no impact on that whatsoever. Those things simply have no place inside the courtroom.
Again, I think the answer is pretty clear. One, he pointed out before, obviously the two, one is different than the other, but the larger context is exactly what he just said. I thought it was pretty clear that if you're a justice in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, or for that matter, if you're on the Court of Appeals or the Circuit Court, but particularly in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, whatever someone believes or may have written or not written in the past takes a backseat to what the law is. The law is clearly written. And to me, I don't want an activist from the left or from the right. I don't want someone who comes in with preconceived notions who says, well, I'm going to apply it one way or the other, as opposed to saying, here's the Constitution of this great state, here's the Constitution of this country, and what is the law, and how did the facts apply to the case? In the case particularly of the appellate process, be it the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, unlike the Circuit Court, judges, or justices, excuse me, aren't in the same position that judges are at the circuit court level. They're looking at the work brought up the process, the appeals process, And it really is, even more so than it is at the circuit court level, fundamentally looking at the Constitution and applying the law justly. Well, again, we asked for writings to understand. No, but I'll answer it, because I'll tell you why I asked for it. I asked for it because I want a full disclosure of writings and backgrounds in that. But my expectation is, people ask sometimes, as you see at the federal level, are there litmus tests? I do have litmus tests. I have outlined them repeatedly. 3 simple tests. Someone who has an understanding of the law, someone who has integrity in their position, but more importantly in their life, and someone who understands that the sole role of the judiciary is to uphold the Constitution of this state and of this country, and then those laws duly enacted within it. I think the record is very clear in terms of not only the record, the positions that he's held professionally, the education background he's had, the positions that he's had in the community, and the interviews and discussions that we've had with people that have worked with Attorney Kelly, both in professional and in civic and community-based roles, show that he applies or meets those 3 criteria that I have as a litmus test. Well, I answered it for you. If you don't like the answer, that's fine, but the answer I gave you was... I have full expectation, but really today's not about political announcements. Today's about announcing who we're going to appoint to the bench. I would give him some time. I would think his position on whether he's going to run or not will largely be dependent on his experience on the bench over the next 4 years. I did not. For us, I think the expectation with any of the folks that we talk to would be that they'd be prepared to, but that's not an expectation to us as to whether or not they run or not. I would suspect that he would run just like any other appointments I would make. Expect to run. The one exception I made to that with judicial appointments, as in the past, has been talking about the Dane County Circuit Court, where we wanted to look for individuals who would serve out the remainder of that term because of the unique circumstances in this county. But other than this county, the expectation is that people are prepared to run, but they don't have to. Great. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.